Welcome everybody to the next edition of the Stay Course podcast. Today, I have the most amazing guest, Beatriz Martinez Penalver, and she is a licensed psychotherapist with over 30 years of experience and the creator of Triumph Steps, a neuroscience-based framework transforming how clinicians, coaches, and institutions approach emotional literacy. She's a thought leader, proving that resilience, fulfillment, and impact can be taught and scaled. And yes, she has been doing it long before this became trendy. Welcome, Beatrice, to the Stay on Course podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie, for having me. It's an honor for me to be here. And I like that bio and I like how you said trendy. Actually, it is true. It has become trendy to talk about mental health. And I've been doing this way, more than 30 years ago. So way before it became trendy.
Wow. And Beatrice, before we get started, I ask all of my guests, what is your favorite food?
So that's really interesting, Julie, because I have friends that make fun of me because I eat everything and anything. When people ask me, "Hey, what do you want to eat?" If I'm like in the Keys, I always want to eat seafood. If I'm in Miami, I always want to eat meat. The only thing that I would never touch, which I'm from Colombia and people actually used to eat this, is liver. So that I would not eat. But anything else, I'm very much, I like Thai food. I like sushi. I like all sorts of food. So if it's meat, I have, my favorite little places. If it's seafood, I have my favorite little places, but I'm very open to lots of things.
I love that. I love that. Being curious about food is amazing. So thank you for sharing that with me. And today we're going to be talking about how happiness is a skill to be learned. That to me is very exciting because I love to talk about joy and happiness. And I'm excited to learn from you. But I just wanted to know before we get into the meat of this happiness part, what inspired you to get started in this work that you do?
So I've been in mental health for over 30 years. It was just an easy thing for me. I wanted to be a psychotherapist and I went to school for that. And I've had a community mental health center for the past 25 years. And for the past decade, I'm more interested in teaching people how to be happy because I feel that not everybody needs mental health services, but every single person needs to know how to be happier. So I do that more as a prevention and coaching side
Oh,
now.
I love that. I love that. Okay, so that's awesome. Teaching people to be happy. So, where would you like to start the conversation today?
Well, I think we can start by saying, what is it, when people say, "Oh, what do you mean you teach people how to be happy?" I always tell people, you know what? It's actually pretty simple. We begin by explaining people some, simple things about neuroscience. The main thing that I teach them is that there is a relationship between what we think and how we feel, right? There's a
Mm.
connection. There are different neurochemicals that flow in our body depending on what we're thinking. And so if we're thinking really happy thoughts, we produce dopamine, serotonin. If we're really anxious, then the neurochemicals are completely different, right? So we think and then we feel something. And when I talk about thoughts, I'm also talking about words, right? Because thoughts are words, are quiet words that we have right here in our mind, right? So what kind of words are we having here that connect to our feeling? And then those feelings lead us to actions. And those actions have results,
Yeah.
right? And those results usually, if we were to put them, in buckets, we would say that they're like four main results that we get in our lives. And one has to do with relationships. The other one has to do with health and well-being. And there in health and well-being, we have physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, right? So it's a bunch. Then we have vocation, work, and then we have time and financial freedom. Those are the results that we get in our lives. We could
Mm.
put them in those four domains.
Yeah.
And if we go backwards, then we started with a thought, right? Thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, actions lead to results in all those areas that we just talked about. So we go back and it's like, oh, so does it mean that if I really pay attention and I'm more aware and I know what it is that I need to be thinking, that the results in my life will be different? And that's basically the math that we do when we teach them.
Oh my gosh. And you know what I love about this is it's very simple to understand. A young person can understand this. An old person can understand this. This is something that we can be implementing at all different phases of our lives. And I feel like so many healthcare professionals or all the information that we have out there, they complicate everything. They go into trauma and you go into the backstory of everything you've been through and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, and I'm not a therapist, but I do like this idea that, putting all of that aside, if we just look at the factors here, a thought leads to a feeling and a feeling leads to an action and an action leads to results. Do I have that right?
Right, you got it right.
Okay. And I just heard it once, like with you just saying it here. I think that is such a great way to be able to explain happiness to someone and how you create happiness. And while you were also talking, I was thinking about what I do journal when I journal and all those categories that you talked about, health, vocation, relationships. Those are all things that I write in my journal when I'm doing my activities for the new year, right? And we're right at the new year now, and as we plan and kind of look at all those different categories of our lives and what we want to create in them, being conscious of creating the life that you want by using these techniques is very interesting to me.
It is, and just not to, because you talked a little bit about trauma there, and I think the beautiful thing when somebody work with us, either with me or somebody in my office, is that we're also trained to really look at trauma, because it is true that for people who has gone and endured really heavy trauma, that we need to go a little slower. Their trauma that gets, logged in different parts of our body and we just
Mm,
hold that. And so there are techniques to help them understand that their past does not design their future, right? Their past
mm,
does not define their future. Their future is designed with the thoughts of today. So we take into account what has happened, we deal with it, we process it, we heal, but always understanding that their past should not define their future, right? They have now, they can empower themselves with new tools. So basically, that's what we teach them. We help them process and heal, their past, because there's very heavy traumatic past for some of them. But we help them understand again, hey, your past does not define your future. Your future is designed by what you're doing today with your thoughts. And then we begin to reframe them and teach them new coping strategies.
hmm So, what else can we learn, or what are some of the ingredients that we need to think about while creating this skill of happiness?
You know that I have a poster that, like you said, children, adults, young adults, anybody can really see. And I have this lady blindfolded in the poster, and there is a target in the room, and the lady is supposed to hit that target blindfolded, right? So if you're blindfolded and they say there's a target in this room, it's going to be very hard for you to hit that target, right?
Yeah.
So once you take that off and you see where the target is, well, you're gonna hit it much easier. You may not hit it the first time or the second time, but at least you're going towards something. And that's the first thing that we teach our clients, to have a clearly identified target. What is it that you're envisioning? What are some of the things that you want to work on? And in those four domains that I mentioned earlier, we always have one that needs more work than the other ones, right? For some people, maybe relationships. For some people, maybe I want to have more of an abundant practice. For somebody else, maybe health and well-being. For somebody else, maybe more flexibility. So whatever it is, we really need to begin to see what's the area and really clarify the area that you want to work in. And one of the things that we do to help them do that is we do some visualizations. So I try to put them and help them see how is it that you would see yourself 3 years from now, and how would you, and this is the key question here, right? How would you love your life to look like in the area of whatever it is that they want? Let's say they're working on relationships. So how would you love your relationships to be like 3 years from now? So
Yes.
they envision that, right? So they see where they are now, we're in the pain or lack that we have right now. How would we love ourselves to be 3 years from now? And then we work on the bridge that's going to take you from here to here, basically, right?
Yeah.
So that would be one of the, big things that we do with them. We help them with, I do very, not to brag, but we do very beautiful relaxation exercises. We teach them how to breathe. Breathing is the key to everything, and the key to connecting to our inner wisdom. I was just in some talks recently. There's a book called God Talks, and that's really what happens in that silence, right? God talks. People sometimes like, I don't want to talk about, God, or but if they don't want to talk about that, that's how we communicate with God. I tell them, well, that's your inner wisdom speaking with you, right? But that the highest version of yourself. So we teach them how to get there, to really clearly envision and see where it is that they would love to see their lives 3 years from now. So that's another one big thing that we teach them. So we start with the connection, then the vision.
And the idea that you're creating a life that you can fall in love with is so cool. I had a podcast a few months back, and I said, how about just fall in love with your life? How about that? How about create a life that you can live, that you are in love with? And I love that kind of way, because if you get up in the morning and you have something you're excited about every single day, then life becomes better. And I know life is hard. I do know life can be hard. I know that there's seasons of life that can be more difficult than others. But I believe it's also what you're going to tell yourself about that season that makes it even more difficult than it actually is. That we make everything a little more difficult by worry and fear and all these other things that we shouldn't be thinking about.
Well, that we're complicated human beings, right? We're very complicated human beings. But the reality is that a lot of people do have big things that they go through, right? The people that we see in our office have big things that are happening to
Yeah.
them. But again, even in those situations, we can support that person and help them bridge, for where they are now to
To where they
where they
want to
would
be.
love to be. So those people that you're mentioning in the morning, that they're just like, oh my, we help them design, because when we're just going through the motions, when we're just kind of, doing the same things over and over again and expecting different results,
Yeah.
um, we're not going to be getting anywhere, right? We're going to be getting the same results. So
Yeah.
when we really get them clear in what is it that you would love to be, be like 3 years from now, then you begin to design, and then you bring them back to today and say, okay, and what's one little thing, one step that you can take today
Yes.
that will put you a little closer in the direction of that dream. One
Yes.
little, and then they begin to focus on that one little thing that I can do today that's going to get me closer into that vision of 3 years from now.
I
And
love
that becomes very doable.
it's so smart, because and it really is the answer. So I'll just tell you a quick story. When I was 32 years old, I found out my husband was cheating on me, and I had a 9-month-old daughter. And so I became a single mom very quickly, and my parents moved to Florida, and I was in New Jersey. So I was left with no support system and no parents, and now realizing that I had to raise this child by myself for the most part. She had two homes that she went to, but although she had more of a support system, I didn't have a support system. So it was a very, very complicated season of my life and a season that lasted for a very long time. You know, I went to a class called The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, and I learned that I can focus on what I can control. That was the first thing that I learned. And the second thing was I learned that I can begin with the end in mind, that I can go and recreate my life from the end forward and begin to redesign the crappy life that I had been handed. And as hard as it was, I started journaling and started writing. And, literally, this class saved my life. I got to tell you, it saved my life. And this is the reason why I got into coaching. The reason why I got into coaching, because I said, God, if I can make it through this thing, if I can make it through this season of my life, then I want to help other people with their seasons and how they have to get through life. And so that was my mechanism. And then I got obsessed as I got older by learning of the techniques of self-authorship. And self-authorship becomes exactly what you're saying. It is the muscle behind the designing the happiness life that you want to live.
Exactly. Exactly. When you say focus on what I can control is exactly what I ask them when I say, what's one step you can take today that you can. So that's something you have control over to take. And then, like looking at yourself, looking at with the end in mind, right? That's the end in mind is that 3 years from now, right? Like what is it?
Yes,
That's my big goal. And what is it something that I can control today that will get me a little closer to
a
that?
little
That's
closer.
exactly, yeah, that's exactly what you learn. And that's why I'm so passionate about this because I'm like, not everybody, we should not be waiting until that moment so desperate, right? Of being alone with a 9-month-old baby and now I don't have, we should learn these skills way before these things happen. So we're resilient, we have it, and we can bounce back much faster.
Yeah.
Um, we
That
all
took
need
a
support systems, and that's a given. But
Yeah, and you're right. Exactly. We need to educate people on this because it is a big answer that we need to be sharing with people. And the other piece to this, Beatrice, that I think about when I think about happiness, I notice that the people that are focused on themselves are the most miserable people. And the people that are focused on service are the happiest people. So when you stop focusing on yourself and making everything about you, and you start thinking about other people and how you're going to serve the world or how you're going to make a difference, I feel like that is another ingredient that we might need to talk about. Or maybe you do talk about that with your clients.
yes, we absolutely do. And one of the things that we begin teaching them is every single one of us has a little bit of gifts and a little bit of challenges, right? But we've been born with a little bag of gifts and talents. And the moment we begin to realize or ask ourselves, how can I use my gifts and talents for the good of all,
Mm,
then it's exactly what you're saying, right? Once we say, okay, this is what I love to do. How do I do it for the good of all? That gives us purpose and definitely happiness. That's absolutely something that we go over with our clients as well. Yes.
I love that. And this is all about building resilience, building maybe there a happiness muscle that you teach people like these are or
We
resilience.
have the 8 steps. We have 8 steps, and they all have to do with building fitness. It's a muscle. It's right. It's emotional fitness, and help them realize that as we go through these things, and as you're taking those little steps, fear is gonna show up in your life, right? That's a given, and that's something we cannot expect to go through life fearless. We need to go through life fearful and acting with that fear, right? That's
Mm,
how we overcome things. We cannot wait until fear is gone to do something. No, we act despite of the fear. And that's what get us, to triumph in our lives in all the different areas that we may want to expand. So we explain to them that fear is going to show up, and it's gonna disguise itself in a lot of different ways, because that's the interesting thing about fear, that sometimes it's very hidden. And so we help our clients, like identify them, because sometimes it's in the very subconscious programming. So we help them identify those fears when they're not so obvious as maybe procrastination or feeling like a victim, or or just not taking responsibility for your actions. Whatever it is that fear disguises itself, we help them see it, because that is a main ingredient to be happy. We need to name it. We need to say, okay, I see you. And now I want to be friends with you, actually, not to see fear as this big enemy, but let me befriend fear and understand that when you show up, you're just telling me that there is a better thing for me. There's something better on the other side of fear. And that's something else that we go over.
Wow. And before you were talking about some breathing techniques, what breathing techniques do you like to use when someone might be up against fear?
So I tell them to do diaphragmatic breathing, which is a deep breath where they actually feel their stomach getting filled with the air, right? It's not right here. No, it's a deep breath that you feel it all the way to your stomach, right? And I ask them to count, and if they can count to 4, when they inhale, maybe 1 or 2 seconds, they stop and they slowly, slowly exhale, and maybe count to 6. So you want the exhale to be a little longer than the inhale. And if we were to do that right now here, and as you do that, you begin to relax all your body. Imagine that there's like a big bright light coming through the crown of your head, and it's washing out all your tension when you exhale. If we do that 3, 4, 5 times, our nervous system completely changes. So
Mm.
breathing is something that anchors us, and that I tell people, I'm going to teach you how to breathe, and they're like, what? I've been breathing since I was born. What do you mean I'm going to teach you how to breathe? And we don't know how to breathe for those moments of tension.
Yeah. Because breathing is an involuntary response that we have been doing, and now you're making it a voluntary response. And I'm sometimes I teach
A
people
tool.
about diction and voice. I do a little bit of voice teaching, and so now you have to reconstruct their understanding of what breathing can be. I love that. I think that breathing just by you doing that, I feel more relaxed. So thank you for that.
Immediately, you immediately, no, no, my pleasure. We
Yeah,
immediately feel it. It's if we're doing it correctly, the body immediately responds immediately.
absolutely. Yes. So
Mhm.
Beatrice, as we close today, what else would you like our audience to know about building happiness?
Well, I would love my audience to reach out to me if they have any questions. We are in Miami, but you know that the world now expanded, so we can be anywhere. I have a wonderful group of coaches and clinicians. I have a coaching certification, actually. So everyone in my clinic, they're all certified coaches. So if somebody feels like, oh, I feel like I need therapy, that's wonderful. If you feel like I'm not there yet, I just want coaching, we offer that as well. It's all emotional wellness, and I would just love to serve anyone who wants to knock on our door. And my email is my first name, Beatriz, Beatriz, at triumphsteps.com. And I would just love to be there for anyone who needs it, Julie. And I really want to thank you for having me here.
Thank you, Beatrice, for being a guest on the Stand Course podcast. I know I'm feeling happier already, and I hope our listeners are as well. Have a great day, everyone.